Continuing on conflicts of interest, we talked a moment ago about what we call the broker quality paradox, and the fact that often competition that brokers engage in for a client is usually ineffective. Clients see this because so often the incumbent broker wins. In fact, it's very common that the incumbent broker wins. Well, one of the reasons is, as we mentioned before, is that the brokers who are out there willing to compete aren't often the best brokers. They're not the most experienced, most talented. And so the incumbent wins. Often clients feel very satisfied. They like their current broker and they're glad that the current broker won the competition. But what clients don't realize is a lot of times the whole competition was ineffective because the broker competing against the incumbent really isn't very talented, didn't put together a great application package, didn't make the arguments necessary to win the business. What the client doesn't realize is they didn't necessarily get the best price. They got to keep their relationship with their broker, but they don't know that they got the best price. We're going to talk about some other conflicts of interest that face all brokers. And again, a lot of good brokers manage these conflicts correctly in the best interest of the client. But we think clients are better off knowing about the conflicts. And so what we're going to talk about now is the conflicts with regard to access to markets. Markets is insurance terminology for insurance companies. Markets or insurance companies or carriers. Markets is the common terminology used in the industry. So there's two areas where brokers could misrepresent their access to markets. One is lack of access entirely, where they don't have access to an insurance company, and they misrepresent that they do to a client. And another one is a relationship conflict, where they don't have a real strong relationship with the market, and they represent that they do. With regard to lack of access, this is a real challenging one for brokers. Very difficult to come to a client and be candid and say, look, there's an insurance company that I know of that has a great program with a particular broker that would be great for you. They might drive your pricing down dramatically, but it's a real tough situation for a broker because if they tell the client about this program, they could lose the business. So that's a real tough one. I think even for good brokers, operating in that gray area is a challenge. Obviously, for bad brokers, they just out and out, lie to clients, and they might even say they have access when they don't to those programs. If the client were to ask, we've run into those occasions where bad brokers actually misrepresent that they have access to programs that they do not. The other obvious conflict of interest is the relationship conflict, and by that I mean, as we've talked before, with regard to leverage, when brokers try to make the case that they have strong leverage with a particular underwriter or a particular insurance company, they'll talk about their premium volume or their loss ratio or perhaps their personal relationship, et cetera. So they talk about their strong relationship. Again, pricing being so subjective, so flexible, the relationship between broker and underwriter has a big impact on final pricing. So, good brokers will operate in the gray area here with regard to the relationship, and they will act honorably, and they won't misrepresent that they have a strong relationship where they do not. Bad brokers will. Bad brokers will represent that they got a great relationship with every insurance company that might possibly be competitive for your business. And if you have a broker with a bad relationship working with an underwriter, the chances of getting a quote, since underwriters decline most applications they receive, are pretty remote, and the chance of getting a good quote is even more remote. So, a real difficult challenge. Again, we'll talk later on in the quote process about some steps you can take to overcome this conflict of interest, but it's a real challenging one, especially because most clients trust their brokers, and this makes it even more difficult for clients to come to believe that the broker might be operating against their best interests. As we work with clients, I'll give you a perspective on kind of this conflict of interest. When we've got an incumbent broker who's working on an account, what we often hear from the incumbent broker is, I have access to all the insurance companies. And the effort is made to try to represent that access is what matters. If I can just get to the underwriter, I can get you a good quote. When you're working with a client and you've got brokers trying to bid on that account, they make the case that in fact they have a special relationship. In other words, assign me this particular insurance company because I have a better chance to get a quote. That's more accurately reflective of the truth in the industry, that relationship is what matters, not just access. And of course, at the end of the day, where this, unfortunately for clients, where this really becomes a problem is what we call hot markets, insurance companies that are right now really competitive. I mean, then the incentive, the conflict of interest is really strong because a broker can't afford not to have access to that insurance company. And so there's even more of a tendency to misrepresent, either access to that insurance company or the relationship.